The map of our world is about to change. And I'm not talking about China breaching boundaries. I'm talking about the continent of Africa splitting into two. It's being predicted now. An entirely new ocean could emerge in the African continent.
Less than 2 decades ago, the ground began to split open in Africa, with fractures opening up across different countries, even splitting a man's house into two. Since then, it has been obvious that Africa is undergoing a continental rift. Such a rift occurs when a continent is set to break into two or more. When this happens, new continents, islands, and oceans will be formed, and our world will never be the same again. Why is Africa splitting up? What is causing the land to be cut open? What are the implications for Africans and the world in general? Join us in this video as we discuss how Africa is splitting into two continents, and most people don't even know about it. In 2005, images and reports began to emerge of a continental rift happening in East Africa. A continental rift is a term given to situations where a continent seems to be breaking apart or separating into two or more. This is a normal occurrence everywhere in the world. In fact, every single continent in our world today came as a result of rifts and shifting tectonic plates. To understand what's happening in Africa, you need to understand what happened hundreds of millions of years ago. Hundreds of millions of years ago, planet Earth was just a singular solid piece of land surrounded by a single body of water. It was one continent called Pangaea and one ocean called Panthalassa. Over the next millions of years, the Earth's outer crust heated and cooled, breaking up into what we see today. This led to the formation of continents, islands, oceans, and seas. Although it might look like the Earth is stationary, it is actually in a constant state of movement and change. The Earth's crust, sometimes referred to as the lithosphere, is what you and I stand on every day. This lithosphere is made up of about 15 to 20 tectonic plates that are constantly moving apart or toward each other. These plates form the large land masses of different continents and islands. When you think of these plates, imagine them as pieces of a cracked shell floating on an extremely hot sea of melted rock inside our planet's core. These plates are closely joined together due to the scorching temperature of the Earth's core acting on them. They are constantly moving, sometimes toward each other, sometimes away. This movement is referred to as plate motion or tectonic shift. Have you ever noticed how South America's east coast and Africa's west coast fit together when you look at a globe? That's because they were once together. Different continents and oceans were formed when the enormous one continent split apart. According to NASA's Earth Observatory, the Somalian plate in the east is moving eastward, away from the larger and older part of the continent, the Nubian plate. The Somalian plate is sometimes referred to as the Somali plate, while the Nubian plate is sometimes called the African plate. Interestingly, both the Somalian and Nubian plates are also moving away from the Arabian plate in the north. These plates all meet in the Afar region of Ethiopia, forming a Y-shaped rift system, according to the Geological Society of London. This separation of the Somalian plate from the Nubian plate is known as the East African Rift. The East African Rift is a network of valleys stretching about 2,175 miles long, from the Red Sea to Mozambique. If the Somalian tectonic plate completely detaches itself from the larger Nubian plate, the result will be the splitting of the world's second-largest continent into two. This would be an exciting phenomenon for geologists and other scientists, as nothing close to this has happened since South America and Africa divided into different continents hundreds of millions of years ago. However, if it does happen, it won't be in our lifetime, it would take about 5 to 10 million years for a clean separation. A complete breakaway of the Somalian plate from the Nubian plate might not be the only possible scenario. One possibility is that most of the Somalian plate separates from the rest of the continent, leading to the formation of a new sea between the two land masses. This new land mass would include Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and the eastern parts of Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. There is also a possibility that only eastern Tanzania and Mozambique will separate. Countries that will benefit from this rift are those that are currently landlocked, such as Ethiopia and Uganda. The emergence of a new coastline will greatly improve their economies with new opportunities for trade and production. According to Ken MacDonald, a marine geophysicist and professor emeritus at the University of California, Santa Barbara, the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea will flood over the Afar region and into the East African Rift Valley, forming a new ocean. That part of East Africa will become its own small continent. Reports show that although the rift is visible, it is not growing fast enough for a complete separation anytime soon. Right now, it is expanding at about 1/4 of an inch per year. Ken MacDonald further explains that the rifting process is happening as slowly as the rate at which one's toenails grow. How do these rifts form? While the subject is still debated among geologists and geophysicists, one popular theory has gained dominance. The assumption is that an increase in heat flow from deep inside the Earth is causing what is called thermal bulges, which can be seen in central Kenya and the Afar region of north-central Ethiopia. These bulges are identifiable on topographic maps as elevated highlands. As they form, they stretch and fracture the brittle outer crust into a series of faults. For most geologists and geophysicists, these bulges are caused by the heat exerted on the Earth's crust by mantle plumes under the continent. A mantle plume is an area under the Earth's crust where magma is hotter than the surrounding magma. The heat from this extra hot magma causes the melting and thinning of the overlying crust, leading to bulges expanding and fracturing. This could also trigger widespread volcanic activity on Earth's surface above the plume. Typically, the stretching of thermal bulges is preceded by massive volcanic eruptions that flow over large areas. These eruptions often appear along the edges of the rift. Some geologists refer to these eruptions as flood basalts, where lava flows from along the fractures of the bulges instead of erupting from individual volcanoes. The lava then spreads over the land like a flood. One prominent feature in the ongoing rift in Africa is the presence of a rift valley. A rift valley is a lowland region formed when two tectonic plates move apart. These valleys are found both on land and at the bottom of oceans. In oceans, they are created by the process of seafloor spreading. Unlike river valleys and glacial valleys, which are shaped by erosion, rift valleys are formed by tectonic activity. Many rift valleys are part of triple junctions, areas where three tectonic plates meet at roughly 120-degree angles. In these cases, two arms of the junction often split to form an ocean, while the third arm, a failed rift called an orlacogen, may become a rift valley. An example of this process is the Atlantic Ocean, which resulted from a triple junction that began in what is now the Gulf of Guinea on Africa's west coast. Two arms of the triple junction formed the ocean, while the orlacogen formed the Benue Trough, which extends through what is now southern Nigeria.